Beautiful roses. Yes. They're so gorgeous. I love them. Hi. I don't know how many of you have heard of the author Robin McKinley. She's a little bit from an older era in some ways, but she's written a lot of awesome stuff, mostly fantasy, obviously fiction, and with plenty of heroines that can kick butt, take name all by themselves, don't need no man. It's great. The book that kind of got her into the writing scene as far as like publishers noticing her and that kind of jump was actually a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Guess what we're talking about today? But no, you thought we were done. 20 years later, she actually wrote another version of Beauty and the Beast that she had taken over as a rewrite. So you might ask, you've already written one. Why write another? What more do you have? So today we're going to be doing like a compare contrast between the book Beauty and the book Rose Daughter by Robin McKinley. I'm going to give the whole conclusion of my analysis to you short and sweet, my sermon in a sentence. Here it goes. The books both follow the same basic premise, but while one is about here, the other one takes it a step beyond and actually does overcome the precedent set before it. There you go, you can stop watching. You don't have to, you can just turn off the computer, go home, get off of YouTube. We're done. Being as we're all, I would assume, aware of the story of Beauty and the Beast, it's a little bit different than the Disney tale, just a smidge. Beauty is the daughter of a rich merchant who lives in the city. Mom's out of the picture. She has two other sisters who are older than her and have kind of some other qualities. And Beauty's kind of like, I'm just kind of the normal girl. Like, I'm pretty. And actually, in the first one, she doesn't really consider herself as pretty. It's funny because her sisters are both named Grace and Hope, and she's named Honor. And she's kind of like, well, what's honor? And her dad explains to her what, honor is. And she's like, well, I'd rather be Beauty. And so the nickname just stuck and they call her Beauty, even though she didn't really consider herself to be beautiful. For whatever reason, her father goes bankrupt, and then they all have to move out to the country, leave the city, leave behind all their wealth and status. And it is here, really, that the stories diverge in a lot of ways. Kind of like how they get from point A to point B. In the first one of her sisters is married, and her husband's like, oh, I have relatives out here. We can, you can come with me, and the whole family just moves out. In the other one, they actually find that some connection has left them an old cottage out in the country. And so they're like, well, that's the only place we have left, so let's go over there. And from there, three main differences occur. So those differences being, one, the role of magic in the story, two, just kind of the differences in Beauty as a character, and her personality, and then three, just kind of differences in the plot as a general, especially with like the reasons why Beauty leaves the Beast. If you remember the Disney movie, her father's sick, and she's like, oh no, I have to go and take care of him, otherwise he'll die, and the Beast lets her go. So there's different reasons for that. Yeah. I'm going to start with the second one, just kind of talk about the differences in character. And the first one, as I mentioned, Beauty, we'll call her Beauty number one, because this is going to be really confusing if I start to say Beauty this, Beauty that, and it's like different things. Beauty number one doesn't consider herself to be terribly beautiful, but she does excel in more academics. So when she gets to the Beast's castle, and there is lots of books that she now has access to, she's like, this is great. There is like a rose in there, but it's not as big of a deal. Something interesting about the Beast's castle, the way, kind of dipping into the way magic works. In his library, he has books from the future that haven't been written yet, for example, like Sherlock Holmes. And so she's like reading all these somewhat modern authors, modern to us. And she's like, I don't know what a motor car is, but we're just going with it. So that was fun. As opposed to Beauty number 2, where things deal a lot more with roses. In fact, the title of the book is called Rose Daughter, whereas the first one is just Beauty. Next up, let's talk about magic. With the story in Beauty number 1, magic isn't really a thing. It's something that Beauty has to adjust to a little bit more because magic isn't part of her everyday world. And so when she gets like this magic rose that, stays fresh for a really long time. So kind of how magic works in the Beast's castle with Beauty number 1 is that there's like invisible servants. Kind of McKinley dresses them as like a wind that sort of does things, and after a while Beauty can kind of start to hear them and realize they're actual people, sort of. I mean, they're probably not like people, but maybe they once were people. Other than that, the first story sticks pretty much to the general, like, what you would expect the plotline to go. They don't explain as much how the Beast got to his cursed state. He just kind of mentions, like, there was, like, a family curse that kind of some of his ancestors were able to avoid, but then he made some error, and it kind of caught up with him, and that's how it happened. And then obviously there's this giant age gap between the Beast and Beauty, which is a little bit funny, because he's been stuck in his Beast state for like several hundred years, and she's like 20. Something I didn't like as much in the first one is the ending where Beauty runs back, returns to the Beast, he's almost dead, she revives him, tells him that she loves him, wants to marry him, and then the curse